begins today. The Tour de France has arrived in the Pyrenees. These mountains are steeper, hotter, and rougher than the Alps. Only the strong will survive. Lance Armstrong will surely be looking to put more time on the peloton, while his rivals will have to dig deep to muster the strength to beat this Superman to the top. We're in the mountains all weekend. Stage 14 now. This is the Saab Tour pre-race show. Today, stage 14. The showdown begins. The stage beginning on the Mediterranean coast, and for a couple of hours, the cyclists of the Tour will see things like that. Sunflower fields that look like they go on forever. They won't even be able to see the Pyrenees, and then suddenly from the haze they appear. It's enough to make anybody go. Welcome to our little world on a hilltop called Aix-Trois Domaines. It's a ski resort in winter. Today, it's an important place in the Tour de France. Hi, everybody. I'm Al Troutwick. We've got a lot to talk about today and tremendous anticipation. If the 2005 Tour de France was anything like an American 7-game series, this is like Game 6. You feel like something great is about to happen, and Lance Armstrong, as the leader, could easily squash the competition again. Remember, easily is always relative in the Tour. Or, finally, his rivals could make a statement. We shall see. Let's bring in Phil Liggett, Bob Roll, and Paul Sherwen to talk about your feelings about what you think we're going to see today. Phil?
We're going to have a very hot day. This actually is hotter than yesterday. I'm quite surprised about that, Al. And although the finishing climb isn't quite as hard as what we're going to see tomorrow, there is an all-category climb out there. I expect to see a breakaway go away. I expect Lance to watch who's in it and to keep a very close eye on his rivals. I'm not sure he's going to win today. He'll make sure he loses no time and, as always, make no mistakes.
Well, he's going to look after one man. I think the man he regards as the most dangerous in a mountaintop finish is the man we didn't really talk about before the start of the Tour, Michael Rasmussen, the man who wears that polka dot jersey, is the leader of the King of the Mountains. And I think for every one of us, Phil, Bob and myself, he is a big question mark, and he probably is to Lance Armstrong too.
Somebody finally going to step up today or not?
No.
And this is the man who's last in the competition saying this.
The climb to the finish is not as brutally hard as we've seen. Big mountaintop finishes. The Col de Payeur, the first one of the day, is an absolute beast. But the riders, after 3 days of very difficult pedaling, have kind of neutralized the attacks that could come to Lance Armstrong. I think if he sees Rasmussen in trouble, then it will be Lance himself that goes up the last climb just flat out to get some time on Rasmussen. But if Rasmussen is riding strong, I think we'll see a pretty reasonable stage today.
We'll be talking about it all. Meanwhile, it's a day when the sprinters die a little bit during the climbs like this. Yesterday, they had their shot again. A relatively flat stage, stage 13, moving through Provence. Early on, Alejandro Valverde. His problem, knee tendonitis. It looked like he just was trying to prevent the inevitable, but then he was nearly in tears, if not in tears, in the car after abandoning. Lance Armstrong seemed to be in good spirits, in spite of the fact that it was day one without Tricky Beltran, a man who would have been very important today. The break included American Chris Horner. Eventually it was two, Sylvain Chabanel and him. They mistimed everything. And the nasty presence of the peloton was there, and Robbie McEwen, again, emerging from all that craziness to win his third stage in the 2005 Tour de France, making the race for the green jersey that much tighter. It's only 14 points the difference now. Remember, 35 points available for a stage win. Robbie won't be thinking about that today, but he'll have a chance before the Tour is over. Pacific Life takes us through the standings. Robbie McEwen takes the stage, and Stuart O'Grady, he's also got that fabulous sprinting touch. American Freddie Rodriguez was right there, and so was the green jersey-wearing Thor Hushovd of Norway. Lance Armstrong wearing the yellow jersey for day 75 today because of what he did yesterday in his Tour de France career. Foster's takes us through the general classification. Who wears yellow? It's Lance Armstrong, of course. Michael Rasmussen has been with him for days at 38 seconds. Everybody else beyond 2 minutes back. Here's what Lance said when the stage was over.
You know, they're all important, but the next 2 days, I mean, anytime you have an uphill finish, it's critical. And being that we have two very hard ones the next 2 days, I can't say enough how critical they are. And we know what's going to happen. We know that tomorrow on the first big climb that the Telecom or T-Mobile is going to attack. and we know they're going to attack the next day. So the boys just have to be ready to ride all day, ride tempo, keep the damage at 30 seconds or a minute or even 2 minutes, and then on the last climbs, let me try and bring them back.
Joining us now from the finish line is Lance's longtime coach, Chris Carmichael. Talked to Lance last night, has been talking to him all along about these stages this weekend. How do you break it down? 38 seconds back, Michael Rasmussen and all the other key rivals more than 2 minutes back. What's on Lance's mind as far as strategy today, Chris?
Well, these next 2 days, the whole tour revolves around these next 2 days. Summit finished today. It's difficult. What Lance is going to try to do is really look to control his chief opponents, Rasmussen, Basso, Botero, those guys. Control them, stay with them. If he starts to see a crack and they start to weaken up, and he can see that he can leverage that and open it up and attack, you're going to see him do that. But I think you're going to see him try to save his legs for tomorrow, because tomorrow's a big day.
All right, as far as the Pyrenees go, I know it's hot today. I feel a wind blowing, but what makes them different than the Alps?
Well, the Pyrenees the climbs tend to be a little shorter. Most of them are around 7 to 10 kilometers in length, but they're steeper, and it's also hotter. In a lot of ways, the Pyrenees are harder than the Alps, especially they're coming after the Alps now. So these guys are tired going into it. Look for Lance to try to look to see if he can attack his guys towards the end, get the time bonus, maybe the stage win, to be able to gain a little time on Rasmussen and his other chief opponents.
Okay, Chris, we'll see you again.
You bet. Thanks, Al.
I love the way Lance Armstrong talks with that cocky confidence that he often turns into reality. No one in this tour really talks like he does.
Look, you've got to face reality. The riders can't wait for July the 24th. He'll be gone, and then they can... The fact is, they're all racing for second place, and they believe it, and that's their first mistake.
So, Paul, are they already beaten on these stages that we're saying are all important?
I think the thing is that Lance has got that psychological advantage over everybody else, and he's been where no one in this race, apart from Jan Ullrich, has ever been. He's won the Tour de France on a number of occasions before, and that gives you that psychological edge. He's dominated Jan Ullrich so many times as well, and I think that's where Lance is so much stronger. And he does sound a bit cocky this year, but I think it's because he's just a fraction more relaxed than he's ever been. He's never been this relaxed. He won't be relaxed today once the racing starts. And tomorrow, I think what Chris Carmichael said is right. Tomorrow is a very big, special day for Lance Armstrong, because it is the 10th anniversary of the death of Fabio Casatelli. I think Armstrong really wants to win tomorrow, but he has to pay attention today.
Is there anybody who's got the mental toughness to overcome this presence?
Lance is a killer, and it's a race for second place at this point. Michael Rasmussen at 38 seconds. That was a gift. That was a 7-minute gift from Lance Armstrong and the Discovery team. They didn't chase him on the stage into Mulhouse. So it would be an amazing revelation if Rasmussen could stay that close throughout the rest of the mountain climbs.
I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm not sure that Rasmussen even believes in himself. I think he's happy with the King of the Mountains right now.
Oh, I'm a believer that when he pulled away to get those mountain points and then got back in the peloton, maybe I'm playing amateur psychologist, but it was almost as if he was saying, Lance, don't worry, all I want is the polka dot jersey. I don't want that yellow
Don't chase me now.
All right, we're going to take a break. That's why they play the games. Who knows? Maybe we'll find someone with a hidden heart today. We're in the Pyrenees, or at least the Tour de France soon will be. The challenge awaits. We'll show you what today's stage has in store next.
The 2005
Saab Tour pre-race show. Here's a look at what the riders will see from mile after mile in the middle of this stage. Some Languedoc vineyards and plenty of sunflower fields. Eventually, the Pyrenees and a crushing finish, which is where we are in our OLN mobile studio. To show you more of the challenges that come in stage 14 today, let's go over to Paul.
Going to be some serious racing over the next couple of days right in the very heart of the Pyrenees. It's one weekend, I think, that most of the riders in this race have really feared. Let's have a look where we are on the map brought to us here by Mitcham. We're right down in the very south of France, and we finish on the borders of Spain. The riders have a fairly easy start as they move away from Agde, and it starts along the valley roads. And as Al said, it's flat apart from a couple of undulating climbs. But once we get towards the final 30 or 40 kilometres, we've got the Côte de Paillere, a very dangerous descent into Axe, and then the summit finish at Axe-les-Trois-Domaines. This is what the profile looks like, and it's really all about that last 40 kilometres of racing. It really is going to be a difficult day in the saddle. And the AMD facts, well, this is what they look like. 220 kilometres today, 137 miles, and that's approximately the same distance as Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Cleveland, Ohio. The last winner here, by the way, when we came up to Axe-les-Tournes was back in 2003, and the winner on that occasion was Carlos Sastre.
Okay, we have our own little yellow issue to decide now. It's time for the Saab Performance Predictions. otherwise known as the race for the OLN yellow jersey. More British domination. They rule the world. Paul Sherwen got 3 for second. Phil Liggett picked Robbie McEwen. Good choice. I failed. Bob Roll's roll continues. He's still got the Grateful Dead jersey for being dead last. It's time now for the Tour de France Orchestra.
We're winning.
Here you go.
Oh, thank you. We're sharing it.
I'm sick of this.
We're getting close, folks. Yeah, tough battle this.
All right, our rotation begins again. It's daily move for Bob Roll to pick first. This is a lot of pressure that comes with
I
the
know.
first pick.
He's going to go Lance Armstrong. Lance.
Can't.
Michael Rasmussen, king of the mountain, best climber, most consistent so far. It's not a killer climb to the finish. He'll be able to hang in the first climb, and then I think he'll win the sprint, just a little bit ahead of Lance for the win.
So Lance lets him go?
Excuse me, boys, my turn. Lance Armstrong will win today. I don't believe a word of it, but you've got to back this man for a possible 5-pointer and to take the lead.
Well, I've got to have a feeling that this man who was very consistent at Courchevel, Francisco Mancebo, is going to take the win for Spain.
All right, I'm going to go with the only man in recent memory has shown that he can handle Lance one-on-one. He did it last year. He's been really quiet, laying in the weeds.
And what's he ever done since? I ask you that. Come on.
Well, you could be right, but it was 4th pick. Give me a break. So you believe it's possible that Rasmussen can leave and Lance would let it happen?
Well, not leave. Maybe leave by half of a wheel.
All right, we're finally ready for racing. It's hot, it's long, and eventually it's going to be high. This is the Tour on OLN. American representatives all over the place. Some Danes, too.
Lance Armstrong's hold on the yellow jersey will be tested. Does he have another command performance in the tank? Will another talk inspire the troops? A battalion of contenders hope the answers to these questions are a resounding no. Michael Rasmussen is just 38 seconds behind, and he's demonstrated the mountains are his domain. Alexander Vinokourov has shown us 2 sides. Does he know which one will show up today? And what about Jan Ullrich and Ivan Basso? 2 favourites who have yet to show their cards. Who will climb to glory on stage 14? 2 epic days in the Pyrenees, which could now decide the Tour. Begin right here on OLN, right now. We expect the hot weather in the Alps is not always the case in the Pyrenees, but they look absolutely stunningly beautiful today. It is very, very hot and very hot for the riders. It's a long stage today. Goodbye to the sunflowers in the first hour and a half of racing as they pass along the Mediterranean coast, and then it's up into the high mountains, and this is where we are. Aix-les-Terres at the bottom and Aix-Trois-Domaines at the top. It is going to be one great day of racing, and the question is, who really is Lance Armstrong's challengers in this race? Hi everybody, welcome back. Stage 14 today, first day in the Pyrenees of the Tour de France. Phil Liggett with Paul Sherwen. Paul, Rasmussen never came here to challenge Lance. Here he is on this day, 38 seconds behind him. That means about 300 metres in the mountains.
It's not very much at all. It's a day of truth for Rasmussen, but it's also a day of truth for Lance Armstrong. Whatever happens on this final climb of the day, it really is very much every man for himself. Armstrong, I think, has got the chance today to see if there is a serious chink in the armour of Jan Ullrich, and if he can, he'll try and get as much time as possible today.
All right, straight to the action. Let's show you first of all how it's all panned out to bring us to the breakaway we're shortly to catch up with. This was the start this morning, 160 riders. Gerben Loic was the non-starter from Rabobank as the field rode away here with Lance Armstrong chatting there with Cadel Evans, who was threatened to attack, by the way, according to our contacts overnight. That was Rasmussen. Jan Ullrich, just what is he going to do? He's never been 8th overall in the Tour de France before. This is the first sprint. The breakaway was on. Carlos de Cruz, the man who was getting water poured over him by Chris Horner yesterday. He wins the sprint ahead of his teammate Gilbert. And then when they moved on to the next bit at Saint Laurent, he was there again, and it was the same result there. Carlos de Cruz getting sprint 2 results. Then we started to get into the ripples of the mountains as the Pyrenees came onto the horizon. In the breakaway is Juan Manuel Garate, the champion of Spain. Over the first, he was beaten by Christophe.
Well, it was a very important early morning breakaway, but Juan Manuel Garate was certainly looking for maximum points at all of the King of the Mountains points. These are only 4th category climbs, but it's a question of honour, I think, today, because after all, we are finishing right on the border of Spain, and on the finish line, it's almost orange with all the Basques who've come down here to support their riders.
The Spanish champion in the thick of the action and riding very well today, winning virtually all of the climbs except one. Here he is on climb number 4. Over the top there in first place as well. Let's join the action now as it comes at us here. We are looking down the slopes of the Porte de Paillere. They are on the lower slopes of it, and I can't believe what I'm about to tell you, but these boys will not slow down. Average speed so far, 44 kilometres an hour, 10 riders out front, Lance Armstrong and the big pack all together at 9 minutes and 36 seconds.
I think there's an awful lot of pride on board the Spanish teams as well, because although they've not had a very good ride in the Tour de France this year, Euskaltel Euskadi are all over the front end of the main field because they are definitely riding into their domain. The leading group, though, Phil, of 10 riders is still holding on to a fairly massive advantage. It's only just crept inside of 9 minutes and 40 seconds, and there we just caught a glimpse of Stefano Gazzelli. And after all, he must be enjoying himself this afternoon because it's his birthday. He's 32 years of age today.
Happy birthday, Stefan. What a way to end it. It's also the birthday, by the way, of Miguel Indurain. He's not riding, of course, 5-time winner. He is 41 years of age today. Looking at the pack, number of riders on the start line, 189 taking its start originally. Now there's 160 left in the race. Only 5 of the teams have the full complement of 9 riders. The loss today of Lowick from Rabobank, that's the first man to fall out from that team. And of course he is a teammate of Rasmussen, and he might be missed in the mountains later. Average speed is enormous today, 27.6 miles an hour or 44.5 kilometres. They have simply not been able to slow down. They found it impossible this year.
They kept the pressure on since the start. In fact, 50.5 kilometres covered in the first hour of racing, and that's when this leading group of 10 got away. They actually attacked at the 10th kilometre. But I wonder if the main field, looking at the speed of the main field, I don't really believe they want these riders to succeed. I think the Spanish riders are chasing to try and pull back the Spanish national champion, Juan Manuel Garate, with the hope that at least Euskaltel can get a chance to win.
Well, this is the beauty we will see for a long time here over the next 3 days of racing in the Tour de France, with a race day in between. We're staying in the Pyrenees. Stay with us now. Stunning racing all the way. How on earth did they get there? I hope the helicopter doesn't forget to pick them up. We'll take a break in a moment.
The 2005 Tour de France on OLN is brought to you by the all-new supercharged Range Rover Sport. Experience the new rush at your local Land Rover retailer. And by Foster's, Australian for beer. And by Giro Atmos, worn by the best riders in the world.
Welcome back to the Tour de France. Look at that beauty here of the Pyrenees. That's where the course is now, right down the valley, but the climbing has started on the hors category climb of the Porte de Paillere, taking the riders over the summit. There'll only be 29 kilometres to go, but we've still a long way to climb yet. The peloton, which has been under pressure by a 10-man breakaway virtually throughout, is at 9 minutes 27. The time gap has virtually not moved for about 25 kilometres, and so they know exactly what they're doing backing that bunch. And of the 10 names up front, none are really threatening Lance Armstrong's overall lead. The best placed is Georg Tochnik, 22nd, 11 minutes and 43 seconds behind overall. So they're watching each other just at the moment as they race towards the steeper slopes of this climb. All right, well, they're trying to limit the people at the front. We'll remind you that in the year 2000, 16 strangers travelled to a deserted island, hopes of winning $1 million. They ended up changing television forever. Now Survivor lives on OLN. You can see the first alliances, the first tribal councils, and the first unforgettable season, Borneo. Survivors lives on OLN. The first episode will premiere after the Tour de France, commercial free, July the 24th at 7. 9.22 the gap. In fact, he started to slip backwards a little bit now. Daniel Nardello on the back here. Just confirming the names in the situation on the breakaway in their entirety. Daniel Nardello sat on the back just at the moment for T-Mobile. Alexander Mus from Switzerland. Manuel Grati of Spain. Walter Benetu, Georg Stochnik, Carlos da Cruz, who has been, don't forget, was in the break yesterday. Philippe Gilbert, Andrei Grifko and Yuri Krishov. It's a strong breakaway. And it's just the way I would think the leaders of the Tour would like this race to go at the moment. Big pressure day tomorrow. We're calling it the Queen Stage tomorrow, and that's what we refer to when we're talking of the hardest stage of the race on paper. But today, believe me, with the climb that they're on now and heat like today, wind is also blowing quite strongly. This is a toughie.
That name, the title, the Queen Stage, comes from the Spanish L'Etapa Reina. They regard the toughest stage as the queen of stages in any race. One man who's had a very hard time here, Phil, at the back of the group is one of the riders from FDJ.com, Bradley McGee. Really has been suffering. He was actually dropped very early on, and I wonder if Brad is suffering some kind of illness.
Well, he's not going well. He's got low morale. He has had a time following a crash earlier in the race. Never got back in. He said he was feeling stronger every day, but he has been at the back and off the back all day long. It does not look good for the future of Bradley in this race. I think I forgot to give you also in the breakaway probably the most important name for the win if it stays away, Stefano Garzelli, former winner of the Giro d'Italia. Never had a great performance in the Tour de France, but inspired today by his 32nd birthday.
Just went through the banner there that indicated 15 kilometres to go to the summit. That's not a lot of morale boost, especially if you're on the rivet in the main field, as a lot of the sprinters are here this afternoon. I've seen an awful lot of the man who won the stage yesterday, Robbie McEwen, hovering at the back end of the peloton.
So as we look down the peloton, 9.19, it looks like the chase is on the slopes of the mountain. And this is an attack now, quite expected here from the leading group. It'll be Alexander Mus, who's trying to step on the gas. He's a good climber, former champion of Switzerland. Obviously wants to thin down this breakaway at the moment. No reaction, they're letting him go. Phonak have had a very good profile in this Tour de France. They are the team of Floyd Landis and Santiago Botero and Oscar Perot. They were the heroes of the Alps on the squad. Now it looks as though Alexander Mus is going to try and carry on what they've started. He's a long way down in the overall classification, but that doesn't matter. A stage win will make up for all of that. Pacemaking being set here by the Gerolsteiner rider, Georg Stochnik. Manuel Garati, Daniela Nardello, one of the real regulars of the Tour de France over the years. And that group is thinning out already here on the lower slopes of what is a long climb, this. We're right on the bottom of it right now as they try to sort themselves out in the breakaway. And it looks as though they're pulling back the service cars as they split up. All right, here's a question for him. Paul Sherwen's language cycling speak. If you are on the rivet, what are you doing? Are you A, riding up from your team car with water bottles, riding in the gutter, or riding perched on the nose of your saddle? Answer when we come back from the break. Don't ring Paul Sherwen up while you're away. See you in a moment. Saddle, because of course we are referring to the old brass rivets that they used to use when they made the saddles of leather. Right, let's rejoin the action now as life is getting a bit precarious here. Stefano Garzelli, Walter Benedetto, Georg Stochnik have gone ahead of the field. They've split this breakaway up at the moment, and they are still ahead of the field here now. There's a field being strung out on this climb and diminishing because they are splitting up now. 7.5 minutes, the latest check, right back to the nose of the peloton, which is where Lance Armstrong is. But the fact that T-Mobile are beginning to drive, they are trying to reliven up this race for themselves because they didn't do very much in the Alps. And certainly there's been a change of attitude today, and that's quite apparent now. Armstrong might be a bit surprised about this, you know. He's way down the back behind his team at the moment, waiting to see just what is the plan here of the T-Mobile boys in pink. Well, perhaps, Paul, we haven't spoken about these boys all race, all season, let's face it. But now it looks as though they are about to try and put matters to rights. They're driving.
There's only one way for them to beat Lance Armstrong, Phil. That is to isolate him from the rest of the team, to put the pressure on right now as we look at this magnificent castle here in this area of the Pyrenees. dotted with destroyed castles like this, because after all, this has always been the boundary between two massive countries, France and Spain, and it's also today going to be the site of a great battle, because the battle today is, I think, setting itself up to be between T-Mobile, who've got 3 leaders who could possibly dethrone Lance Armstrong, and of course Armstrong and Discovery Channel.
That's the Chateau de Husson. It's in slight need of renovation, but it'll be nice when it's finished. And the riders somewhere just below on the way up here. This is a long climb today, and it is going to be the biggest test, I think, so far. Good tempo riding being done by the peloton, and again another fast day. The breakaway is split up because, in fact, Stefano Gartelli, here he is, celebrating today's 32nd birthday, has clearly earmarked this one for a chance to do something. Now, he's only 14 minutes behind Armstrong overall, so he's also gaining time. He's pulled back 7 minutes as we speak.
A very talented bike rider. He goes downhill very well, because actually once we cross the summit of this climb, the Côte de Paillere, we have a very, very difficult and dangerous descent into Aix-les-Thermes. But look at the team here of T-Mobile. As we went to the front, Phil, they were looking very, very urgent.
We are on the climb now, and the field at the back is paying for the early pace. They are splitting up here. Nicolas Jalabert was 65, 192 is Iko Kamano of the Basque team. He should be a good climber, but look at this. This is the main field fragmenting here. It looks as though Ludovic Turpin, breakaway yesterday, has gone back. They are ticking them off one by one. So Lance Armstrong's group now, and primarily the pink jersey T-Mobile riders of Ulrich, are breaking this field apart. And look at this.
This is Guarini on the front, the man who a couple of years ago was the winner at the summit of the Alpe d'Huez. Just pulling across there is the white jersey of Jaroslav Popovic. They have isolated Armstrong. Armstrong now has no teammates left at all. They're not going to wait for the last climb of the day. Today, there are 3 T-Mobile riders here, Phil, against 1 Lance Armstrong.
This is unbelievable. All of a sudden, from a quick rhythm, they have come out with a big plan there. That is Roberto Heras says that's enough. Here goes the attack by Alexander Vinokurov. He's on his attack again. He's looking for more time now. Can anybody follow him? Ulrich and Armstrong has found him.
What is wrong with Jan Ulrich? He's pacing Lance Armstrong back to his own teammate. This is really quite remarkable. Vinokurov there had the gap. Ulrich kept the pressure on and rode to the front of the race. Armstrong just sat there and said, Jan, you want to get onto the podium, my man? You put the pressure on and close the gap to your own teammate.
Well, the cream has come to the top very early on the Tour de France today. They're trying to hit Armstrong 1-1, I think. And when Ulrich eases, I think Vinokurov will try again. This is unbelievable right now. And trying also to get on term is Patero here. And he's wondering what's going on because they have split, and this is on the lower slopes.
We've still got 10 kilometres to go to the summit of this climb, followed by a very dangerous and precarious descent into Aix-les-Thermes. Then we've got the final climb of the day up to Aix-les-Trois-Domaines. That's Laurent Brochard. He's actually not too far away, but the damage has been done to Iban Mayo, number 191. Finally today, sitting in the wings, we've seen T-Mobile have come out to play, and they're playing pretty aggressively.
Well, I never expected to see an attack like that. Not so early on, but they've split the leaders up. They've waited. They've allowed that breakaway to set the pace all day. Nobody interested. They have been waiting. We saw how T-Mobile came to the front, and then they launched an attack, which is his all-team discovery here.
Well, you know, that's very clever what they've done, because in the past, what they have done is allowed Lance Armstrong's team, Discovery Channel, to be the team setting the tempo, and they haven't been comfortable with that tempo. So today what they've decided to do is actually to go out and set the tempo themselves.
So as they come up the mountain now, there is Basso on the right, Rasmussen is on the left, all looking at each other. The yellow jersey officially put into chase at number 3. This is Christophe Moreau, who's been riding exceptionally well. He's third in the race at 2 minutes 34 seconds. And Big George Hincapie sat there too. They must all be thinking, boy, this race suddenly has taken a turn for the worst all round. Jörg Yats has gone through. People are talking about him as the man to do something today.
Well, a lot of riders in serious pain here this afternoon, but I've got to believe that T-Mobile finally have raised the flag. The pink flag there is Ivan Basso.
So look at this now. Basso looks around. He's not celebrating anything, but just wants to get up on turn. Ulrich, for the first time, I think this Tour, looks as though he's a man with a bit of fight in him. Look at that now as he moves across to the right of the road.
Well, he's done, and his team have done exactly what they wanted to do. They have got rid of all of Lance Armstrong's men. Popovich, though, here, number 7, hasn't popped yet. What he's trying to do is pull him back up to the leader. He wants to be with Armstrong. Look at his face. He's decided. He's determined. He knows Armstrong is alone. He knows over the final climb of the day he's going to need help.
So, as Ulrich now, they're starting to get a little bit of settling down now. Armstrong is there. But again, they put Armstrong on his own. It's going to be mano a mano again now. Floyd Landis is also there, sat there. And here is the back of the group. This is the front of the group now. Garzelli, Walter Benetu, Georg Tocznik are the pacemakers. Look at this, Paul, because Vinokurov is lifting the pace again. There are only 6 riders left of the original 10 up front. Here is Armstrong now. I'd love to know what he's thinking right now.
I would love to know what he's thinking right now, because Christophe Moreau has gone as well. Armstrong, he doesn't look as if he's in difficulty. This looks very much like the shape of Ivan Basso riding away. Vinokurov is now the man who's got a bit of a problem. Coming across is Jan Ullrich. Armstrong has yet to respond to this. Ivan Basso has taken up the challenge of the Pyrenees.
Well, Basso, Lance is on his own. His teammates are just behind him. He's going to have to rethink this. He can't chase everybody. Basso is now turning the screw. Basso, remember, is sitting 4th overall at the moment. 2 minutes, 14 seconds down. There is Armstrong marking out on, I think it was Floyd Landis. Forward right of him is the man 38 seconds behind him, Rasmussen. At the moment, Jan Ullrich thinks it's Christmas, because there are 4 of them: Christophe Moreau, Ivan Basso and Alexander Vinokurov. Armstrong is watching and waiting. He's not panicking.
Well, this man is a very scary calculator.
And there goes Rasmussen.
He'll respond now. He has to respond now.
Landis has gone.
He has to respond to Michael Rasmussen, because Michael Rasmussen is only 38 seconds behind Lance Armstrong in the overall classification. But if anybody knows this race and anybody knows this route, it's the man there in the yellow jersey, because he has ridden every kilometre of today's stage and tomorrow's as well.
Well, this is an amazing situation here as the riders now. Ulrich is sensing he's onto something here. He is for the first time attacked Lance Armstrong, and I can't remember the last time he did, but he's getting a result, he thinks, and he's going to be encouraged by this as Armstrong tries to get back on terms.
Well, Armstrong, I think, was going to have to respond to this, Phil, because this is rather a dangerous move. It looks like Michael Rasmussen was coming across there. We've still got a lot of climbing yet to do, and the important thing about Armstrong is he knows how to be calm and collected. He's cool as a cucumber here, but that's very difficult when you bear in mind the temperature is in excess of 30 degrees Celsius. But what a great challenge here by the man who lies a fair way down in the overall classification, Jan Ullrich. He's 8th at the start of the day, 4 minutes behind Armstrong. These guys don't know what to do. They think, what do we do? Armstrong's not here. They can't actually believe whether or not he's showing a sign of weakness.
Well, Armstrong would not have expected to be isolated from his team for the second time in this year's tour. At the start, he did say he would let things happen and see what happened, and he's got choice now. He's jumping on Mancebo's wheel. He's going to try and move up, because this was not part of the plan at all. He was going to watch, he thought, just one man today, Rasmussen, T-Mobile and Ivan Basso.
Armstrong's gone. Armstrong has left the group. He said, OK, guys, this is too late. I've got to go because this is important.
He knows he can't afford that gap to open. Now Lance will show us perhaps why he needs the Tour de France. He has been called to make an effort that he really didn't expect today.
Calm and cool. This man is a master tactician. He's under attack by the heads of state of the sport. Alexander Vinokurov in the turquoise jersey. Jan Ullrich looking over his shoulder saying, I can't believe this. I can't believe I've got the gap on Lance Armstrong. In the group as well is Ivan Basso, the serious challengers. Ullrich, I think, can't believe that Armstrong isn't coming across. Well, I could tell him if he was listening to me right now. Jan, Lance is on his way, and sorry, here he is.
Well, that's going to depress them. And look at this. He's going to say, look, boys, I'm back. And he's going to ride over the top of them. He hooks up there on the tail. Basso continues. Now, the steady tempo. That's Kashikin, in fact, who's there. It is not Christophe Moreau. And Lance is coming up. Here comes Rasmussen, quickly trying to repair the damage on the back wheel of Mancebo. Well, all of a sudden, the Tour is putting all the top men back together. Can you believe that on the climb?
Well, you threw a whole lot of numbers up in the air, then most of them had pink jerseys attached to them, but T-Mobile today, they've actually been very clever tactically. They've seen over the past, they've looked at, in fact, Phil, they've had 6 years to look at this. Armstrong approaches these climbs, he puts his men on the front, and he uses them one by one to weaken everybody. T-Mobile have looked at this and figured, how do we dethrone Armstrong? Well, we destroy him on a climb before the final climb of the day. We're the ones who'll go out and launch the attacks.
What a great race now, Paul. You've got to take your hat off to Basso, to Ulrich, all of those guys who decided again that they would find out just how good Lance. They've launched an attack here. At the end of the day, they might destroy themselves in so doing. But now they've made this a wonderful Tour de France. Here comes the arrival of Rasmussen, the king of the mountains currently, and Mancebo. I'm wondering if Vinokurov is now in a little spot of bother there, holding on.
Well, he's about 5 or 6 bicycle lengths off the back. You see him keeps getting out of the saddle there. He's trying to recover, trying to pull himself back into this race. He is, after all, the man who started the aggression on the early slopes here of the Côte de Paillere. They're all looking over their shoulder. What they're trying to do, they're trying to read the faces of the other guys in front of them. And the man you tipped, Phil, before the start of the race has just come back here. Cadel Evans has just got onto the back of this group.
Well, amazingly, Cadel Evans says he's never attacked in a professional bike race in his life. He's only followed wheels. There he is in the red jersey behind Lance, and he said today he's going to attack for the first time in his pro career. Well, he's just joined the leaders. It's up to you now, Cadel.
Well, this is a nice time to attack if you can, because these guys, these big heads of state, they're all looking at each other. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Rasmussen has come back, so has Mancebo. Vinokurov has recovered. Now, too, this is Andreas Kloden getting himself back to the front. If you're feeling good, Cadel, now's the time to make a move.
Let's have a look how it looks now in the overall. Armstrong is there. Second place, Rasmussen. Morrow isn't here. He's third. Basso is there in fourth. Haven't seen Botero recently. Leipheim is not here yet. Mancebo has come up. Ulrich is there. Kloden is there. Floyd Landis is there. Vinokurov is there. Cadel Evans has joined. So we've only got about 3 riders in the top 14 who are not here.
It's really an unbelievable showdown here, and we haven't even got to the final climb of the day. But looking a little bit further up, that was a great defense by Armstrong. He was put under difficulty for maybe a kilometre or so. He watched to see how the race was developing, and then he rode across. Almost forgot about the 3 riders at the front of the race, because they must now be seeing a lot of their advantage crumble.
Well, the agonised face we saw there was that of Walter Benito, the Frenchman who was in the lead. It looks as though he's shortly passing down the line a little bit, but he was there in the front 3 riders. It's now just got Zelli and Georg Tocznik. Benito on his own in third. As we look here, Vinokurov is at 4 have gone back here. These 4 have gone down.
This is the second group on the road, third group on the road, but the second group of the heads of state. Marcus Rasmussen there is in a little bit of difficulty. It looks like Floyd Landis is trying to set the tempo behind. These guys might get a chance to recover, but the man who's got the bit between his teeth is in fact the leader of Team CSC, Ivan Basso. He is rejuvenated. Catch my mind back to when we were talking through the Alps, when he said in his mind his goal was the Pyrenees.
Well, this is where he has to score. If it is, this is Vinokurov. Now, has he gone back from the group? He has, I think. No, he's going back from that second group. Vinokurov putting that vicious attack, and he's hurt one man himself. He's now dropping back from it.
But what he has done is he's set up a very good situation for Jan Ullrich. I think today T-Mobile actually operated as a team. That was the important thing. They went out there with a plan. They wanted to isolate Armstrong. Armstrong now does not have anybody left from his team to help him out.
He's in control. You saw the look on his face there. He just nudged right up to the shoulder. Basso. Deja vu, as in the Alps a year ago when they rode up the mountain side by side, nobody with them perhaps. That will be still to come when we get to the last climb of the day. Vinokurov, we know, is a man who can crack, drop to his own levels, back into the green zone, can go back again.
Well, it's a crazy descent off the summit of this climb here, the Col de Paillere, and that's maybe what he's hoping for, a little bit of respite to come back to the leaders. Armstrong can see the return here of Floyd Landis coming back, and of course Cadel Evans. Cadel Evans today could be making a great operation and moving himself right up into the top 10 overall, because there he is, the Australian rider, sitting in about 6th place.
Well, this is now a battle of the mountains. Who said it was going to be an easy day today? As we look here at the riders now on the climb, there are 7 here, including Lance Armstrong. They're not the leaders on the road, but they are the men that matter in this year's Tour de France. We will not miss hardly any of the action. Stay with us all the way here on OLN. I can assure you there's plenty more action to come as there are mountains. Lance just about in control at the moment. Well, the action here is incredible as we've seen Lance Armstrong attacked and all of his team has suffered. They've all gone out the back of the race. Armstrong had to cross the gap himself to reach the side of Basso and Ulrich. Landis at the back here has just joined on as well. And coming up behind at quite a rate is indeed Andreas Kloden and also him. One other rider, Michael Rasmussen, second at the start of the day. Levi Leipheimer is also now trying to get back into the action. This is a doer struggle here on the final big all-category climb of the day. There's Armstrong, he's to fast whirling legs. He always pedals a lower gear than anybody else. That looks like the Leipheimer trying to climb into the action now. A little bit further down the road, we're looking for Andreas Kloden, I think. And behind him, there's Kloden and Rasmussen, Mancebo. Behind these three is Alexander Vinokurov, who was part of that T-Mobile attack on the lower slopes, which shot out the back all of the Discovery Channel squad.
Well, they were taken really by surprise because of the acceleration from T-Mobile, and it was all set up by this man. Then the role was taken up by Jan Ulrich, who today, Phil, was really trying to do something special. We can see the Rasmussen group is at 5 minutes and 38 seconds, but Alexander Vinokurov is actually behind that group on the road and looking here a little bit like a broken man.
But that puts Rasmussen 27 seconds behind Lance Armstrong, so he's almost doubled his overnight advantage, Lance, on Rasmussen at the moment, and that's his main concern of immediate concern. But still 5 minutes ahead up the road. There are two riders setting the pattern. Stefano Garzelli of Leaky Gas, Tochnig of Austria and Gerolsteiner in between. I don't think Benetto is there now. I think we've just gone by him. He just looks so bad.
Well, I've never seen quite so much urgency attached to attacks like this on the penultimate climb of the day. Ivan Basso keeps getting out of the saddle, trying to dislodge the other riders with him. Well, today Floyd Landis, Phil, by the way, in the green and yellow shorts there of Team Phonak, is riding himself into the role of the leader of his team. Phonak at the start of the Tour de France said, you know, we have three leaders. We've got Botero, we've got Pereiro, and we've got Landis. We don't know which one is going to be the top man. I think today we've answered that question.
Well, he's done well to cross the gap because he was caught with Kloden and Mancebo and Vinokurov originally. He left them to reach Lance, just like Lance left them originally to reach the leaders. And so that's a very good piece of riding by Floyd Landis. This is Michael Rasmussen here. He's now over a minute behind Lance Armstrong in real time on the general classification. And he must watch out now because Ivan Basso is closing in on him quite quickly for that second place slot.
I'm a bit surprised to see number 31 there, Francisco Mancebo, being put into difficulty because I thought he was a man who would be looking for the win today.
Well, we're looking here at Jan Ulrich as they are now on the climb today, which is an all-category climb, the Porte de Paille, and I think by courtesy of AMZ we can bring you all the facts of this brute of a climb, which may have proved significant today. There it is. We've done all the little ripples from the sunflowers over the little mountains, the stepping stones. These were virtually dominated by Juan Manuel Garate, but he's now been caught and passed by the charge of the big mountain. And after we've done those four little ones, this is the brute. And we go straight up to the top at 6,500 feet today, the Porte de Paille. And there's the details for you. 9.4 miles is the climb at an average grade of 8.1. It's steep and it's going to hurt. And it takes us, as I say, to 6,565 feet. It's here where T-Mobile have tried to test Lance Armstrong. So far, he's answered the call. Well, the field is spread now right down the mountain. The main field just exploded with that attack. They are just all over the place. The strong climbers are trying to put matters to right. Rasmussen here in second place, Mancebo trying to race through to the two riders up front. But they too are struggling right now.
That was Cadel Evans and Kashakin. He wasn't able to take the pace of the accelerations of Ivan Basso. What they need to do is basically now recover as much as they can, find their own rhythm, and just not try and catch the riders in front. Then there's the possibility of a recovery on the descent, especially in the case of Cadel Evans, who's a brilliant mountain biker and goes downhill pretty fast.
Well, he's going to have to gamble on that ball because Levi Leipheimer was with those riders and he's gone through them and he's now riding on his own.
Well, this is Georg Tocznik at the front. He's actually putting time between himself and Stefano Garzelli. Garzelli in the lime green. He really is not enjoying these Pyrenean passes here this afternoon, but he seems to be reinvigorated here. Pushed on by the fact that this afternoon is his 32nd birthday. He too is a very good man when it comes to going downhill fast.
Well, Garzelli here, we know Georg Tocznik is a good climber. He came in as joint leader of the Gerolsteiner team, but he's getting on a bit himself now, Georg, and we thought the best man would be Levi Leipheimer. Leipheimer is still much further ahead of Georg on the overall classification. 22nd Tocznik is just now. He was best placed in the morning breakaway of 10. 11 minutes behind Armstrong. He's a wanted man, though. And Lance is chasing at around about 5 minutes with that select small group. A quartet of riders. Now it's 5 of them here. But the rider on the right, I think, is going backwards.
There's a man who was in the early morning breakaway, slowly but surely coming back to the group. That was Philippe Gilbert. Let's not forget there were 10 riders together at the start of the climb, and this is Kristoff going backwards as well. Slowly but surely, we're going to catch certain riders who are in that early break. At the start of the climb, Phil, they began with a 9.5 minute advantage over the group of the whole peloton. And these guys have already been wiped away.
Well, right up there is the top of this mountain. Now let's pull back. It's still an awful long way to climb. I thought Floyd Landis was looking pretty good just then when we got a nice look at his face. Very cool, calm and collected. He might be on a big day today. That's Landis, second right off the front, following Basso. As we see a very select group. I don't think Gilbert will hang on too long to this group of 4, because the pace now, to say the least, is a bit like the weather, rather hot. And Vinokurov dropping away of the moment. He's looking in some sort of trouble. We'll take a break, come back for all of the action. The grand battle of the Porte Paillere. We're still on the climb. We've got a long way to go yet. This is Alexander Vinokurov. He started it all, but he wasn't able to stay with the pace when they lifted it up a notch. He's still trying to battle his way into the top 10 on the course right now. The peloton, if there is such a thing, is around about 6.5 minutes. Lance Armstrong is up the road there now in that leader's yellow jersey. And I think Vinokurov will have to hope for better things in the last hour of the day. These long, empty roads on the Porte Paillere, but you look ahead, there are cars all the way to the summit here. You can hear the crowd. You take your hat off to someone like Vinokurov. He really gave it his best shot, and then came the counter-attack, and he had no answer. These are the 4 riders. They're not yet the first riders on the road, but they are the men that matter in this year's Tour de France. Armstrong, Ulrich, Basso and Landis fighting now for what could be, by the end of the day, the top 4 positions in the Tour de France, because suffering for the first time is Michael Rasmussen.
Well, it's not a surprise, Phil. We saw Jens Voigt in that big breakaway on the road down into Mulhouse. We were told by his coach that he was generating around about 500 watts. You can't do that on a day in the Tour de France if you don't pay the note back a little bit later on. Jens Voigt paid the bill back a couple of days later and then was eliminated for the Tour de France. This is an answer really to that big effort that Rasmussen put in. He paid the bill, but now he's having to give something back.
Worth remembering, Paul, the last time we came up this mountain was also the way to where we're going, and the winner of the climb was indeed Francisco Mancebo, who's on the front there now. And he's a bit behind doing the same again, but he knows the climb as good as anybody. Cadel Evans here, just scrabbling for the wheel of Andreas Kloden, second overall in the Tour last year. The American flag gives you an idea of the strength of the wind as we get up towards the open spaces. And just look at this now, another big effort by Alexander here, picking up one of the Française de Jeux riders, dropped from the front.
Well, you know the way he's riding, Phil. He's riding here with aggression. That's Carlos de Cruz there, number 174. He was the most aggressive rider on the stage yesterday. But the way Vinokurov is riding, keeps getting out of the saddle, almost sprinting, because he's really on the edge of cracking, but he wants to stay in contact. He feels that if he can stay within a minute of the Armstrong group at the summit of this climb, he's got a very good chance of catching them back up on the descent.
Well, the body can overheat on these climbs. It can recover as they continue on the climb. The breakaway is still there.
They've just picked up Alexander Moose. Well, not for very long, because he's almost gone straight by there. He probably had a quick chance to say hello to Floyd Landis. Good luck, and I'll see you tonight on the massage table.
It's quite likely now, because if they've got the strength to climb on the massage table tonight, because this is now a great move by Floyd Landis. He, like Armstrong, was caught out on the attack. Armstrong got back before Floyd, but Floyd looks now pretty cool in there. And I just wonder if Ulrich again is just about under the red zone right now.
Did you see Armstrong look at the camera then? He was almost looking into our eyes to say, guys, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm in complete control of this situation. Jan Ullrich, though, we have always said, never disregard this man. Leipheimer did ride himself up through the cars. That's a great move by him. He could be plotting himself into the top 5 at the end of the day. He started the day in 6th place. 2 riders in front of him in the overall classic. 3 riders, in fact, in front of him have appeared from the Grace.
Well, this is the group here now, which is also struggling heavy, and coming up there from the back now is in fact Zubeldia. Now, if memory serves me right, wasn't he 4th in this stage 2 years ago?
Actually, he finished in front of Lance Armstrong. He was able to finish just in the line ahead of Jan Ullrich when we got to the summit.
But so far, this has been a day for the Americans. I have to say, this has been a tremendous ride by the Americans, because Leipheimer has got up here now, and so too Landis already there, and of course Armstrong has read it in the end. Put matters to right. This is the man struggling. He's never ever once said he was looking to beat Lance Armstrong. In fairness, Michael Rasmussen came here to win the King of the Mountains. He's found today he couldn't quite lift his body to the same level of the men who believe they can win the Tour de France. There is now a group which is building. 3 Americans are in there. Good chance for us to remind you as to our Bank of America standings of the American riders. 1 kilometre to go there for the leaders. Lance Armstrong is in lead. Levi Leipheimer is just hitched up. So too Floyd Landis. 6 and 10 could be history by tonight. Bobby Julich in 16th place. Hincapie, he's just dropped back. Chris Horner had a brilliant day yesterday. Freddie Rodriguez finished in 3rd place yesterday as Robbie McEwen tried to get him the win. And that's our Bank of America American standings, and I have to say it's a country which has grown with enormous stature in the world of cycling in this last 20 years. This is now a group which is now building quite significantly, but it's been hard work. 2 T-Mobiles, an arm up by Lance there, wants a drink possibly, or maybe information. Where's my team?
I think he's just looking for information more than anything else. He's coming alongside Johan Brunel. What's going on, Johan? Where are the guys? I wouldn't take that bottle if I were you, Lance, because there's a possibility you might get a little fine for that at the end of the day.
He can afford it.
I think he's going to pay.
Yeah, the bottle's more important. I remember Miguel Indurain did that. It's usually a 10-second penalty in the old rules, because remember Miguel doing just that when he was in his last year. He was so tired and hungry he needed a drink. But anyway, that's up to the judges, and we'll find out overnight, I'm sure. But Lance Armstrong has got it on board, and he's back in this group, and they are climbing steady.
Daniele Nardello is the T-Mobile rider on the front. He's another rider who's in that early group of 10 who's been picked up, and he's now giving everything he can. He's looking to see if there's anything left at all to help Jan Ullrich on the early slopes of these climb. 2 riders from Kazakhstan in this group
coming back
he is. To the second group of chasers. They're only coming back to Michael Rasmussen. We've still got Jan Ullrich and Armstrong, right. 25 seconds in front.
Kashikin has brought back his same countryman but rival teammate there, Alexander Vinokurov. Vinokurov, if he gets into the group where he can rest long enough, there's some good descenders in that group, they might close the gap. It's less than a minute between the 2 of them at the moment. Armstrong now has got all of these boys organised. He's watching them now. He's no reason to push the pace. They've lost their first attack against him. He survived. And here it looks as though we've got Tochnig in trouble.
Well, Tochnig, I think, is the leader at the moment.
He's still up front, yes.
He's just ahead of
Garzelli.
Stefano Garzelli, who, looking back down the line there, is becoming very much noticeable by his absence from the leading group. This is a good move by Team Gerolsteiner here this afternoon. This was the second string of the bow of this team. They felt at the start of the tour they had 2 leaders. Georg Tochnik was one, the other was Levi Leipheimer, although Levi is in a much better position in the overall standings, starting the day in 6th place.
Still trouble for these 2, they're not quite on. I must have misread the panel earlier. I thought he said 1 kilometre to go, but I must have been 5. It's now 2.5 anyway to the summit, and it's 4:32 leader to Lance Armstrong's little group just now. So, as they continue, it's hard work here for Vinokurov and Kashikin to get there. As they continue now, we'll soon be inside the 2 kilometres from the summit. The Texas Lone Star, she's still flying proudly. He hasn't cracked yet. We'll be back. down now on a very select group of cyclists, and Lance Armstrong, the leader of the Tour de France, is showing them he is now back, fully recovered. Watch your next move, boys. And there are 3 Americans in that very select group of 6 riders: Armstrong, Floyd Landis, Levi Leipheimer, and Jan Ullrich and Ivan Basso, because moments ago Alexander Moos has fallen back from the front group. This is an amazing race now, but it's a levelling of the ways. This is a back down the road a ways to the second group. So 5 riders now trying to get on terms. The only 2 riders away now from the original 10 are the leader on the road, Georg Tocznik, should survive to the summit with luck, followed by Stefano Garzelli, who's in second place, couldn't hold Tocznik's speed. Then comes Armstrong, Ullrich, Basso, Landis and Leipheimer. Just untouched now is Alexander Moos. That's Juan Manuel Garati. Is he being passed by the boys? Because there's so many. Yes, he is. He's still one of the early morning breakaways. They're picking him up now. He's not even mentioned on the computer anymore as they're catching them one by one. Well, Armstrong now has decided he's got himself out of the red zone and he's going to see if he can stretch the boys. This will hurt them psychologically as well. Just over a kilometre to go to the summit.
He's stamping out the authority. He could see that there was a little bit of lack of cohesion at the front of the group, so it's his turn to come forward and set the pace making. But he still looks across to see what the faces of the other riders with him look like. While further up the road, this man is leading a lone escapade. Number 161, Georg Tocznik, who is the leader of Team Gerolsteiner, along with Levi Leipheimer. Phil, we've been in the saddle today for almost 4 hours and 52 minutes. That's a long day when you bear in mind, I think we're still looking at around about an hour to go to the end.
At nearly 140 miles, 220 kilometres, this is a massive stage. And when we've gone into the mountains, they've come in here already averaging 44 kilometres an hour today. Now their legs have suddenly found the mountains of the Pyrenees and they are hurting. I take my hat off to the big teams today because they've attacked Lance Armstrong and his team went very quickly, but Lance was up to it. 4 minutes 15, the difference between the leader and the Armstrong group.
But 1 minute difference between Armstrong and Rasmussen.
That's
Armstrong is going to be very happy with that situation because he may well have just had a slight worry about the position of Michael Rasmussen, close to him at 38 seconds.
He even free will there, Paul, to say, come on guys, your turn.
Well, he wants to make sure that everybody in the group donates a little bit of energy to the success of what they are doing here this afternoon in the overall race. They are putting time between themselves and everybody else in the overall classification.
This is the group further back. Kloden, Mancebo, Evans, Rasmussen and Zubeldia is the man in the orange there, inspired by the fact that there's an awful lot of orange standing people on top of the final mountain, but very close to Spain, the main road to Andorra today. Big sign in the town saying passage to Spain impossible, but they came in last night, so they're still here. The roads, of course, are closed for the Tour de France. Here is Christophe Moreau.
Moreau is a long way back. He's there alongside Michael Bogert, so I would presume he has lost himself a huge chunk of time today. He started the day in 3rd place in the overall classification, and that is rather a sad day for him. He was hoping to try and get himself onto the top step of the podium here at the Tour de France this year. But again, this big day in the Pyrenees, a lot of riders suffering from the heat, which has really come onto the Tour de France only in the last 48 hours.
At this crucial stage of the Tour de France, the favourites have moved, and Basso, Leipheimer and Jan Ullrich and Floyd Landis are moving up the overall classification tonight. At the moment, they're not moving any closer to Lance Armstrong, who is in fact going further ahead overall because of the loss of Mancebo. But they're getting up the overalls. This is still the leader now, making his way towards the summit of the Porte de Paille. And he should safely go over the top in 1st place. He will try to survive. He won't be waiting on the way down, because once he's into Axe-les-Thermes, he starts the final climb up to us at the comedy position. And this will be an outstanding victory for Gerolsteiner.
Great victory for Gerolsteiner, who came to the race with the 2 leaders. This man was one of them, but Levi Leipheimer is the other, and he's comfortably in the group there with Lance Armstrong. Funny to see Lance's 2 former teammates at the front of this group. Levi Leipheimer there in the pale blue jersey, and the man who was alongside Lance Armstrong last year, Floyd Landis, doing a very good job at setting the tempo.
Well, almost 5 hours now. It's going to be nearly a 6-hour race today. And these boys will know that tomorrow, which is even more difficult than today, if the effort is severe today, they might crack tomorrow. They've got to be ever so careful. Looking down on the group led by Cloden. Well, it's not right now. He's sat at the back there. It's led by Mancebo, Zubeldia in orange, and also Rasmussen and Cadell Evans of Australia tucked in there. Further back down here we have Christophe Moreau. He was third overall at the start of the day. Michael Bogart just behind him. This... well, he rode so well in the Alps, Christophe Moreau, and now we're in the Pyrenees. Life is not so good to him.
Well, the two different mountain ranges are very, very different in their severity, and some riders can ride well in the Alps and then fail completely in the Pyrenees. Likewise, some riders don't do well in the Alps, as Ivan Basso was very much noticeable by his absence. Here, he really seems to be reveling in the slightly steeper inclines of the Pyrenean mountains.
This has been one of those days. Ulrich launched the attack with his team. A brilliant move. You've got to have the strength to hit it home. It looked as though they caught Armstrong out, but as it turned out, they didn't. It has been an extraordinary day of racing. Look at the crosswinds here. Nearly at the top. The lone figure now of Georg Tochnig as he sees the top of the biggest climb so far, the Porte de Paille here in the Pyrenees. It looks as though he needs a parachute to go down. Well, he'd welcome one. He's making his bid to win the stage, and right now Armstrong has got his hands full with those who are trying to stop him win the Tour de France, because there they are, Armstrong twisting his way up, and he's in the company of all of the men who could be lining up behind him overall tonight. Ivan Basso, Floyd Landis, Jan Ulrich, they are the riders, and Levi Leipheimer, that make up this extraordinary group. Paul, everybody that got to this position had to make a real serious effort.
They all had to make big efforts, but it was a great tactical start to the day for T-Mobile, because they decided, rather than let Armstrong dictate the pace on the final climb of the day with all of his team at the front peeling off one by one, we'll hit him hard and we'll hit him a long way out from the finish. It always worries me when I see spectators running alongside the bike riders like that, and we did see it a couple of days ago, a policeman grabbing hold of one and injecting him rather rapidly from the side of the road. It's a danger for the riders. Fortunately, they all seem to be fairly safely around there, as Jan Ulrich now has decided he wants to stamp his authority on this group.
Another fine turn of pace-making by Jan Ulrich. He'll go up in a lot of people's estimation today. He's been hit by an awful lot of criticism, but today he was the man who tried to shake Armstrong with a tremendous attack, and for a while it looked as though he had. The chase group here, Cloden, Mancebo, Evans, Rasmussen, Zubeldia. Zubeldia is finding his legs on Pride, the rider in orange. There's got to be some Spanish rider here to fly the flag at the finishing line. The loss yesterday of Valverde, went 5th overall with a leg injury, was a great sadness to everybody, I think. Don't touch him and don't push him, otherwise he will get an automatic penalty.
And that won't be fair, because he didn't ask to get pushed at all there as he's surviving. He's looking up the road, and it's an empty road currently. He'll have to take a number of risks on the descent down into the valley and the town of Axley-Turn before finally then kicking up towards the summit. And this final climb of the day up to Axley-Turn, it's not all that long. It's only around about 8 kilometres or 5 miles, but it kicks in at 8.3%. And in a couple of points, it's 10%. This is Alexander Moos.
He's come through this group now, and I don't think he's got the legs to hang on there. 1 kilometre to the summit for Alexander Moos. It's not long. If he just keeps them in sight, who knows, the group may catch up yet with the Armstrong group, because they will live to fight another day on the next climb. They probably will stay together now on the descent, and no point in wasting effort trying to catch up with Tochnig. He still remains persona non grata to these boys for the moment, because he's lost too much time so far.
This is turning out to be rather an exciting day in the Pyrenees. Everybody was expecting and looking to tomorrow's stage, when we know there are going to be 6 massive big cols, and the finish comes at the end of the Plat Day. Floyd Landis now flickered the wrist there to the master himself, Lance Armstrong. Come on, Lance, it's up to you to set the pace now. I'm not your teammate anymore, I'm a rival.
Exactly, and I've got my own reason to ride with you today. Landis there just behind the shoulder of Lance. 52 seconds to the group behind of Rasmussen. And on the 38 he was behind before the start of the day, and he's a minute and a half out of the race now behind Lance. This is turning out at this moment in time being a very good day for Armstrong, but the other boys have shown that all of the teeth haven't been taken out. They still can bite.
Well, Walter Benetto is still in front of this group. He has survived. Now, that is remarkable. The race situation, I was trying to knock out the numbers of riders who were in that leading group of 10 who had just survived. Well, Tocznik, we know, is leading the race. Still in second place is Stefano Garzelli, and still in third place is Walter Benetto. So he's done a great job to survive for Boyga Telecom. But I think I'm just remembering what Chris Carmichael said to us this morning, Lance Armstrong's coach. Armstrong doesn't mind too much whether he goes into the time trial with a 38-second advantage over Michael Rasmussen, but if a position presents itself on the road and Armstrong can get himself big time, he will take it.
Well, just look at this now. This is going to be a real dizzy descent here. This is Ivan Basso grimacing over the top. This is the way down now. Basso does not like going downhill as much as some riders. Ulrich himself also isn't the world's best descender. And this is the group that will have to make the descent of its life here, because Rasmussen needs to get back up alongside Armstrong. He gets the points, the few as they are, for the mountains over the top. So he was in fact in second of that group over the top. But that's all right. He gets points there. It's an all category, so he'll stay well in the lead in the King of the Mountains. Well, there's the face of Basso. Not such a good man downhill. We are going to rejoin the action on the way down when we come back. There's still climbing to the finish to come as well. We'll see you in a moment. Suddenly, somebody lit the blue touch paper and it exploded on the lower slopes of the Porte de Paille. Armstrong saw his team evacuate rather quickly, but he came up to the leaders and is still with them. The leader on the road right now is Georg Tocznik, and he's descending very, very quickly. This is the third group on the road. There might be one or two in between from that early morning move who we haven't yet picked up. Certainly Stefano Garzelli is up there. Lance back with the team, assessing the situation. More drinks for him. Keep hydrated, that's his secret. And Johan Brunel is a man who insists. He keeps on drinking as he rejoins the leaders here. Now there's only one big obstacle between him and keeping that maillot jaune. It's the climb up to the finishing line. It's been a terrific move for the big stars of the Tour today, because they are slowly climbing up the overall classification. Armstrong, I think, has totally recovered from the earlier shock. He's taking on food as we continue the descent. Pretty sharp hairpin bends here now as we come off the top of the climb. That's an interesting banner. 25 kilometers to go. We drop down into the town, which really is a beautiful town, not far from Spain, Axleter. The Route de Spain is the road that takes you straight down and into Andorra, that little principality locked in the mountains. Not going there this year, as we now look here at the group containing Andreas Kloden and Mancebo. This is a continued chase down, so it's nearly 5 kilometers lead here, Paul, for Tocznik.
Well, it was 3:45 a few seconds ago, and this man is taking a seriously rapid descent off the slope here of the Côte de Paille. But he's got about a 15-kilometer descent, because the last climb of the day is actually just inside of 10 kilometers. He'll pick his way through the town. The funny thing about this descent, it actually drops you right into the heart of Axleter, and it's very dangerous, the descent, especially as you get into the last 4 or 5 kilometers.
Well, as we watch the descent here, we now have a number of riders in between, but only Tocznik and Garzelli ahead with Benetto of this group. Well, this is the way you go downhill at high speed. You can't always pedal, of course, as you continue down here. These boys are touching speeds now of probably 60 miles an hour. And as we watch the bike riders go down, let's have a touch of our Saab power descent. The top, as we flash back to the mountain summit today of Paille. They came over in ones and twos, then Ulrich, then Levi Leipheimer. They all started to race through the twists and turns of the mountain. Watch how they brake hard, out go the knees. You think they're on motorcycles as they go round that climb. On the way down, that's our Saab power descent of the day. And there's a long way down yet. Here we are, back with the descenders now. Andreas Kloden, Mancebo, Cadel Evans, Rasmussen, and Jaime Zubeldia. Zubeldia, they might yet get up, but they're going to have to take risks if they're going to cross the lead to the front men. It's possible. They're coming closer now, about 20 seconds the gap, that's all. And as you know, Michael Rasmussen could get himself back into this race before we start the last climb. Zubeldia wants something. We'll take a break, rejoin us, the action continues. As we dice through the trees here now towards the descent, we switch from the Porte de Payer onto the Col de Schule, but we're always downhill. It gets a little bit twisty off this plateau. This is Heimadou Zubeldia here. Still wants his service car, but if you think the group's grown, it has. Just a moment ago, up came Evans, Zubeldia, Cloden, Rasmussen to join Armstrong, Ulrich, Basso, Leipheimer and Landis. Look at that for a group of selected men. Boy, call that the creme de la creme at 15 kilometres to go, though. About 4.5 kilometres ahead, Georg Tochnig is trying to run to what I think might be seen as the best win of his career, and he has a real chance now. He lies 22nd overall, 11.43 at the start of the day, but don't forget, he is thinking now only of the win as he continues here at the moment in this leading group. This is 7th Tour de France for Georg Tochnig. His best ever position was 12th in 7th in last year's event. That was his best. Well, remember that this is only one of 3 days. Tomorrow is an horrendous day in the Pyrenees. The Queen Stage, we call it. All the mountains are with us, and because of that, we will give you live tomorrow morning from 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time, full expanded coverage. And after that, we have our prime time expanded coverage program coming to you at 8 Eastern and 9 Pacific. Stage 15 is certainly a stage not for the nervous, as the mountains are with us all day. And I think the hors d'oeuvre today has been rather special, because they certainly haven't taken a day off. They are going. Armstrong's group, 3 minutes of 51 in the yellow jersey, but that is now behind Stefano Garzelli and the man ahead of him, which is Georg Tochnig. They still believe they can take first and second, and Lance Armstrong and the group don't really care whether they do or not, because the battle for the victor in the Tour de France is in this group we're watching.
Well, you can see Alexander Vinokourov is making an incredible descent there. He's actually only 18 seconds off the back of this group, and actually it's less than 18 seconds, because here he is.
There. The return of the great, or as they said the other day, the great Alexander, as opposed to Alexander the Great. Here he comes, back on. Alexander Vinokourov for taking a drink en route from his team car, get the bottles filled up and then get up there.
The advantage he had, Phil, was the fact that that second group caught the group of the yellow jersey, Ivan Basso, Jan Ulrich and Lance Armstrong, and they slowed for a fraction, maybe only 1 kilometre or so, but that's all that Alexander Vinokourov needed. Now he's on the tail of the cars, he can pick his way through slowly, doesn't have to panic, he knows he's going to make the junction. But I think he realises when you've been dropped on a big climb like that, the writing is usually on the wall for the last climb of the day.
One would agree with you, Paul, but it's not quite as steep as this one. You never know with this boy, do you? Well, back up with the leader here now as we see him on the way down. He is 4:18 ahead of the Maillot Jaune group, as we're looking back to Vinokourov shortly to make contact with Armstrong, and he will be back. Let's remind ourselves of yesterday and the Honda highlight of today. It was a marvellous race yesterday, as we saw, with a rather extraordinary and exciting sprint finish. Chris Horner here looked as though he might have won his first stage in the breakaway for a long time. He waited to see the finish, then he went for it, but right behind him, a man he knows very well, Fred Rodriguez, leading out Robbie McEwen, and McEwen snatching his third victory of the Tour de France. Yes, we know how you feel, Robbie, and that's our Honda highlight of the day. Right, well, as we look now of today, and this looking down there is a group of 10 riders who are now chasing Georg Tochnig, followed by Stefano Garzelli. Walter Benetton we never see, believe me, he is still third on the road, and we are waiting here for the arrival of Alexander Vinokourov. He hasn't got up yet, but he's not very far away from rejoining this select group of 10 men. This rider, though, is going for gold. Georg Tochnig, and he's heading for the last climb. We'll see you before we get there. Welcome back. Now, that was the brief face of Georg Tochnig, who's just passed through Axley-Terme and has started the climb. The last climb of the day is approximately 8 kilometres to go. Meanwhile, life is a bit rough for Alexander Vinokourov. He has made a demon descent down here, but he just can't close that 25 yards. And he's been trying now for about 5 kilometres. But they've only allowed one car to stay in that gap right now, and it's Armstrong's Discovery car. And he's got to stay tight on the group. But Vinokourov is getting back. Believe me, he'll be back shortly. All action here, and here's one for you. Looking for more behind-the-scenes tour coverage? Then you sign up for the Daily Tour. This is an exclusive partnership between OLN and Active.com. You'll receive daily email updates, good commentary, and the chance to win cycling prizes. You can get the free Daily Tour newsletter by visiting either olntv.com or active.com. Do it today, and Alexander Vinokurov is virtually on. What a tough flight. Well, the select group of 10, Alexander is on. It's been a long chase. Armstrong won't be surprised. He will have almost expected this man to return. He has become the gadfly of the peloton with the retirement of Claudio Chiappucci.
But Phil, the amazing thing that surprises me is this year in the Tour de France, on two critical occasions, two critical stages, Lance Armstrong's team, which appears on paper to be the strongest team that he's ever fielded, have been noticeable by their absence. He very rarely gets isolated so far from the finish. Now, that's something that T-Mobile picked up on today, and they are the ones that have created this isolation.
I know exactly what you're saying, and I couldn't agree more. But Armstrong, it seems, is on such a high this year in his last Tour de France. He can do without them when it matters. He does work them very hard, let's face it, when he's controlling the race on the other stages. And it's going to be a tough day for them tomorrow. They've got to prove they're up to it tomorrow, that's for sure. About 4 minutes, 40 seconds now. Behind the leader, remember that Garzelli is in front as well. So too Walter Benetto, suffering, but in there in third place. We haven't seen him for a while. Our camera's rightly concentrating here on what will be the last climb of the day. Now, this is the leader, and this is Georg Tochnig doing the ride of his life. We've seen him through his amateur days. He's been a great bike rider. I really thought he was getting a bit past it, but last year he got 7th overall. 2003 he finished 12th. He has got to be considered a man who might come good in the next few days.
Well, on that final descent, Phil, Georg Tochnig has actually extended his advantage, because the last time check coming through is 4 minutes and 20 seconds. So he took some serious risks on that descent. Armstrong sitting at the back of the group here as if he's the chief of the orchestra, orchestrating the manoeuvres here. He wants to see who's going to move. He wants to see if anybody is going to try and attack him again. And if they do, I'm quite convinced he will try and take advantage. But in the back of his mind, Phil, he has to remember what is coming up tomorrow, because the Tour de France is not always about today, it's about tomorrow, it's about next week, it's about finishing on the 24th of July. And tomorrow there are 4 very difficult climbs before we get to the final climb of the day, Plata Day, and this is a show of force.
Look at this now. He sees the climb and he breaks away again. Can you believe that, with Alexander Vinokurov launching an attack just like that as he goes to Axleterm? He's been on the back of that group for less than a kilometre, and he's at it again.
This is courage. He's riding on sheer courage here. He was dropped. He chased for 20 kilometres. This is a textbook manoeuvre by Alexander Vinokurov. If you catch a group like that, if you are weakening, come to the front and go straight by, and he's done exactly that. I don't think they're going to allow him just to ride away like this, because Vinokurov is in 11th place overall, and he will be tickling the position of Floyd Landis, who's just in front of him. And you can be absolutely certain that Lance Armstrong will start now to take advantage of riders looking for their own place in the overall classification.
Well, you have to admire this man.
Well, I don't admire his team. It's Team Mobile who are on the front there chasing him down. Andreas Kloden is setting the tempo behind Alexander Vinokurov. Phil, that is pathetic teamwork. They are looking at a man who I'm convinced now is going to change teams in the winter transfer season.
I wouldn't disagree, and in fact the rumour is he's going to ride for Lance Armstrong's team next year. He said, Vinokurov has said, it's the only team he would consider going to ride for. So we'll see, as officially the transfer season isn't starting yet, and in fact if anything was proved, then you can receive severe punishment for discussing transfers at this stage of the year. There is Floyd Landis now. Time to concentrate. Here comes Lance. He's hooking up as well again. And Cadell Evans now in a little bit of trouble here as we start the final climb to the finish. Alexander Vinokurov had attacked, chased down by his own team, and is now going off the back again.
He's been dispatched by T-Mobile because of the pace set there by Andreas Kloden. Trying to get across, though, Francisco Mancebo will not give up. He, Phil, I think, is being spurred on today by the fact that I think the majority of the language is spoken on the sides of this mountain is Spanish, and that's why he wants to try and do something special.
Look at the face, just like it was the start of the last climb. It's T-Mobile striking again.
Alexander Vinokourov spotted bother, but this man won't lay down arms. He will fight back. I think probably a little dejected by the fact that when he looked back over his shoulders, he could see the men laying the tempo on the front was his own teammates, the riders in the pink jerseys of T-Mobile. But Ulrich, I think, must be in a big day. Let's not forget this man has had a very difficult Tour de France. He crashed the day before the individual time trial, and he crashed in one of the stages to Mulhouse.
Well, as we see here now, Alexander Kloden, second last year in the Tour de France. Nothing like the form he had then. I think he's pacing Ulrich to what could well be a decisive attack on the slope. This is amazing here now, as the riders will not give up today. They are hitting everything they have at Lance Armstrong. No decision yet. It's going to be great to the top. Aix-les-Thermes lies the mountain Aix-Trois-Domaines. Here Lance Armstrong has met with success and with disappointment. Today this peak could be the key to his 7th Tour victory. The final peak of stage 14 climbs to his denouement right now here on OLN. And that's where we are now, and it looks as though T-Mobile, Andries Kloden and Jan Ullrich are ready to throw everything they've got, because there goes Heimar Zubeldia. Last time he came up this climb, he crossed in 4th position. Looking to do it again this time, but he hasn't had the legs. The attacks are again violent here, and these boys are not thinking at all about what's to come tomorrow to Saint-Laury-Soulan. There's the group getting smaller as we go up the climb of Aix. Lance Armstrong so far has done nothing wrong at all. He's been caught off, but he's got back. He's put matters to right. Alexander Vinokourov, when he leads, he never stays with the boys. He's either in front or he's behind. And right now, he's had his enthusiasm destroyed by his own 2 teammates on this climb.
Well, I think if I was Alexander Vinokourov, I'd be thinking about the transfer season now. This is a move by Ivan Basso coming to the front. The response coming from Jan Ullrich. And in 3rd place, nice and comfortably, Lance Armstrong. He really seems to be keeping a very close eye on how the race is developing here this afternoon. But he's not ready to dish out the pain yet, Phil. I think he's thinking about tomorrow.
Landis and Leipheimer are feeling a bit rough, but they're coming back. He sat back in the saddle. And now Lance is looking. Is he going to kick and ride them away? I think he's waiting, you know.
He's waiting. I think he's waiting till tomorrow's stage, because he knows tomorrow is going to be a beast of a climb. But again, Rasmussen has been dropped, as has Francisco Mancebo.
Well, he got a couple of points in the all category climb, so that'll keep him well clear in the King of the Mountains. He may have to concentrate on that because he's on his way back. He's still in 2nd place in the Tour right now, but he's been out of that at one stage today, but he's gone back into it again now. And now they've got rid of Kloden as well as Mancebo. And so the pace is just lifted that 1 kilometre an hour by Basso. Did you see the face on Ulrich sat here on the wheel of Ivan Basso? Concentration. Armstrong riding that little pedal click quicker. And look at the face too on Landis. These boys are suffering, but they're staying.
Well, Phil, it's still amazing because there are still 3 American riders in this select group of 5 men. In 3rd place, you've got Armstrong. 4th place, you've got Landis. 5th place, you've still got Levi Leipheimer. That was Walter Benetton.
They've got him. 3rd man on the road is gone. Only 2 ahead now.
Only 2 riders left ahead of this group, Georg Tocznik and Stefano Gazzelli. Armstrong dancing up to the back wheel of Basso. Basso keeps looking over his shoulder, twitching his arm there. He wants somebody to come forward and do a turn.
Well, Benetton has somehow hung on, but how long will he stay there? Where are the other 2?
Landis just there, just hovering, and it's actually Levi Leipheimer who's doing the effort to try and pull them back into this race. Low down over his bike, it's almost an aerodynamic time trial position for the American in the pale blue jersey.
Landis giving him a hand, grab his wheel, Levi, because it's going back to the group for the moment. Basso took it up to the red zone, couldn't go any further. They mastered him, he slowed down just a bit. It is 3:24 to the leader on the road now. Well, this is unbelievable attacking riding. 5 kilometres here now for the man who's leading the race, Tocznik. Let's have a look now at the profile here. As we see now, the last climb of the day over the Porte de Paillere we've been. Now we're racing to the finish. Aix-Trois-Domaines, 4,500 feet. Not as high as we've been, but when you've got the finishing line on the top, that will make it hard. And that brought us by AMD as we return to the action. And Walter Benetton, I think the action's over for him. He's been away a long time today, and a good ride by him. but he can't live with this. Well, there's another rider in trouble again. This will be Levi Leipheimer. He hasn't quite managed to close that gap. He's going to have to bury himself if he's going to. It's beginning to ride away. He made a good move. It profited for Floyd Landis, who has rejoined there. Levi will have to try and lift the tempo and get back. And then Van Leipheimer, Floyd Landis is unhitched again.
Well, these riders were put into difficulty on the Côte de Paillere. They recovered and came back, and it's not surprising now as the big men at the front really turn up the cranks. The tourniquet is starting to strangle all of the opposition, that these three men are leaving behind everybody else. A little bit of picture breakup. These are live pictures. We're looking now at the top three men in the Tour de France. Jan Ullrich there in the pick jersey, Armstrong moving up to his shoulder, and Ivan Basso as well, the man who was third overall last year. Basso is currently in fourth place, but with a ride here this afternoon, Phil, he could actually move up and tickle second position.
He certainly could do that, because Rasmussen is again in all sorts of trouble at the back, and today is an even worse day than today. This is Tocznik, though. Don't underestimate this man. He hasn't won a race this year. The last race he won, in fact, was the National Time Trial Championship of Austria. But now he's chasing on.
He's chasing on. He's actually got 4 kilometres to go to the top of the climb, but 5 kilometres to go to the finish, because the last kilometre is actually reasonably flat here into Aix-les-Trois-Domaines.
Well, I can tell you where I'm standing, Paul. It still looks quite hilly.
It still looks pretty hilly to me, but the King of the Mountains is actually 1 kilometre to go. And I'm sure most of these riders will know that, because they've looked at their race book overnight. These three riders, well, these are the three riders whose names we mentioned before the start of the Tour de France, and they are setting us up for a very interesting showdown. Jan Ullrich is a man who you can never dismiss in the sport of professional cycling. Armstrong kicks up through the inside.
And as they continue to go up the hill here now, we have the yellow jersey of Armstrong. I just got that feeling he's going to let these guys keep on hitting him, and then he's going to get annoyed.
He will get annoyed. This is an incredible face that Armstrong has written across his brow here, concentrating on the road in front. You know, this man has ridden all of these climbs so many times in the last few years. It's as if he knows every individual centimetre. Looks across to see Ivan Basso. This is very much like last year, isn't it, when he looked across and the only man able to stay with him on that occasion was Ivan Basso. But this year, Jan Ullrich, Phil, is back.
Well, I'm delighted for him, as I always am when a man tries like he has, and has ripped this race apart today. Let's face it, this is further back now. Cloden has cracked now. Mancebo is also struggling. Rasmussen is climbing, because that's the Team Discovery car in front.
Well, it could be that he's riding himself back into this race. Had a little bit of difficulty at the start of the climb. It's almost an unknown for this man, Rasmussen, who last year finished 14th overall in the Tour de France, admitted that his goal coming here this year was to win a stage in the King of the Mountains, and now he finds himself high up in the overall classification, having put in a 170-kilometre breakaway on the stage into Mulhouse. He must try now and make sure that all his efforts count.
Well, look at this now, and there is Garzelli. He is past now. They're racing for second place on the highway. Armstrong just gets on with it, pouring perspiration. I don't think they're going to catch Tocznik, but you never know with this man, as the Americans on the slope have spotted their man.
Well, Tocznik is at 4 kilometres to go to the finish, but 3 kilometres to go to the top of the climb. Armstrong looks across. He's looking at the face of the riders with him. This is Andreas Cloden, who can't stick the pace of the two men in front of him. On the left is Francisco Mancebo. On the right is Michael Rasmussen, the leader of the King of the Mountains classification, who's trying to keep himself today in second place overall in the Tour de France. Cloden, he did a lot for Ullrich in the early part of the climb. All he can hope now is he's going to survive, but he will still keep himself in the top 10 at the end of today's stage.
Well, I have to say that Cloden has certainly risen to the occasion of the Tour de France. He has a bad case of Tour fever, because he was riding nothing like this before the Tour, but he's really worked hard to play a part in the Tour de France and for his team. Now look at the face of Rasmussen. He rides on here, trying to get rid of Mancebo and race to more mountain points. Ullrich looks across just to see, are you guys suffering, or is it just me here? Because Armstrong is tapping out the pedal and Basso is following him now.
Just look at the way that Armstrong taps out this rhythm. He's got a very high cadence. His cadence in the mountains is something he's taken to try and emulate Miguel Indurain, who, by the way, today, the King of July for Spain, Miguel Indurain, just happens to be turning 41 years of age, and he's actually here at the finish line.
Well, it's not far. He could have come here by bus, I think. We're looking now at the yellow jersey. Just catch a glimpse of those race referees there. They better take it easier. They're getting a bit old to jump around like that as they're waving at the crowd to keep them back here as they continue on the climb. 4 kilometres to go. Basso is there. 2:10 is what the race radio is saying. They could still spoil the day of Georg Stocznik, who's never won a major stage of either the Tour de France or the Tour of Italy, and they are still closing in.
Well, he must be going through all kinds of pain, and here he is. You can see the different pedaling style. He's trying to keep the largest gear he can going over. He will hope that he survives to the summit of this climb. He deserves to win. He escaped after 10 kilometres in a group of 10 riders. They had a maximum advantage of almost 10 minutes, but at the last time check it was down to 2 minutes and 10 seconds. And Phil, unfortunately, on the slopes of a climb like this, you can have that wiped away in 1.5 kilometres.
Well, Lance Armstrong seems to now be conducting the orchestra here. He's got the front of the 3 of them. His 2 old rivals, the nemesis is there. Jan Ullrich, 3 times second in Paris to Lance, 4th last year. Ivan Basso was 3rd last year to Lance. Lance says, well, boys, here we are. Deja vu, your turn.
Armstrong taking up 3rd position, and you will notice that Armstrong will be very attentive when we get to the summit of this climb, Phil, because if Georg Stocznik does survive, there is still a 12-second time bonus for the second man to cross the line, and Armstrong will have figured that into his calculations.
You bet your life. He's aiming for a possible 2nd place finish here if he's got the legs for the sprint after this incredible day. These are the most incredible athletes in the world here. They're pushing themselves to the limits. Yes, they've got the talent to do it, but that makes it no easier as they push themselves right to the limit of their endurance now. Armstrong still tapping out that rhythm. Always puts his sunglasses into his helmet upside down. As he continues on the climb, he's got his 2 rivals alongside him. And Mancebo pacing Rasmussen here as they now pick up Stefano Garzelli, 32 years of age. I know what it feels like.
32 years of age this afternoon, but Stefano Garzelli, Phil, will also be making a pretty good operation in the overall classification. He started the day in 26th place, and by the end of tonight, he's probably going to be well inside of the top 15. But the chase between the leader, Georg Stocznik, and the yellow jersey group is now 2 minutes and 1 second. It all depends on whether Ivan Basso and Jan Ullrich turn up the pace, because I don't think Armstrong is too worried. He is playing a defensive role here, and he's playing it to perfection.
Well, Basso could be moving into 2nd place here in this race, because they could be opening the gap on Rasmussen, who's not looking too good right now. Armstrong continues now. He's decided the best way to stop these boys attacking him is to keep the pedal revs high and stop them going by. As they're racing up towards the banner just ahead of them now. Well, we're looking now at 2 kilometres to go, and already through, I beg your pardon, 3 kilometres to go. Already through is Georg Stocznik, and the time gap is about 1 minute 50. They are closing in at quite a rapid.
It's 1 minute and 50 seconds, the difference between the lone leader and the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong at 3 kilometres to go. But for Georg Stocznik, Phil, he's at 2 kilometres to go to the finish. He's around about 1 minute to go to the summit of the climb. He shouldn't be caught before the end of the day.
So the situation now at 2.1 kilometres to go for the leader. Georg Stocznik is leading by just 1 minute 50 seconds on the Basso, Armstrong and Ullrich, and these boys are falling away.
They're falling away slowly but surely. The time between Armstrong and Rasmussen is what is important for Armstrong, the man from Texas. Only 38 seconds separated them at the start of the day.
Still they are at it here. Lance Armstrong, Jan Ullrich, they're still closing in with Basso on the leader, Georg Stocznik. They'll be in his sights when they come up the home straight, but they may not catch him, you know.
I don't think they will catch him, because very shortly Georg Stocznik is going to crest the top of this mountain, and he'll have a slightly easier final kilometre of racing. There you can see Jan Ullrich just going to the front to set the tempo. Armstrong looks so easy, and the Colombian flag there looks a little bit precarious.
I tell you what, Ullrich nearly hit the back wheel of Basso there. It was a fault of the crowd, I think, and the Colombian about to be lassoed, I hope, by somebody, because this is not good. There's no Colombian in this at the moment. as now they try to ride around him. The crowd narrows down. And there is the Breton flag of France. It's a while before Walter Benetton will be up here. He's not quite a Breton, he's from the Vendée. But there we are, as we now see Ulrich push on here, and right behind Lance Armstrong. The old 1-2 are in business again.
These, Phil, are the giants of the Tour of the last 7 years. Jan Ullrich was the winner of the Tour way back in 1997. He's a great champion. Since he came to the Tour de France, he really has been a dominant character. He's never finished worse than 4th place in the overall classification.
And he's driving.
And it's great to see him back in Armstrong's final season. He's always been Armstrong's arch rival, and he is again this year.
And Georg Tocznik's never known suffering like this, and he's still not sure he's going to win. Hasn't won a race since June last year, but this will be the biggest win of his career. He's a man who's finished 5th in the Giro d'Italia as well as a high finish of 12th in the Tour de France. He's never won a stage in either race. This will be his biggest win, and it's not certain yet. He'll be desperate to see the last 500 metres. These boys are more concerned with the infighting, and they're just sweeping up to Georg Tocznik because of it.
Just sweeping up slowly but surely. I'm sure that Tocznik is going to survive as Armstrong comes to the front. I think he wants to pick his way precariously through these lower slopes here, because he knows how dangerous it is with the crowd starting to get excited.
We have to remember Luzard-Didon when he hooked the bag and he went down, and Ulrich saw it and rode past him and waited. But now they're in the barrier section, life gets a little bit sweeter.
It gets a little bit sweeter, a little safer, but also a little bit noisier as well, because this, over the last kilometre and a half of the ascension, is going to be like a barrel of noise. Armstrong just kicking a fraction here, Phil, and this is the moment where last time Armstrong was put into difficulty, and Ulrich was the man who was strong.
Ulrich, I think, is now hurting. Here is Georg Tocznik coming up towards what is the summit of the climb. He gets the prize for the top. Ulrich has cracked, he's gone, Ulrich has done it, and he's just fallen back. This was his big effort, and it hasn't worked. He has dropped off.
But Ulrich will move up in the overall classification here this afternoon, and the reason he was dropped was because of the acceleration over the final few metres of Lance Armstrong in the yellow jersey. Armstrong not now looking back at all, not asking for any help from any other member of this leading group. The man who's accompanying him is the same man who was able to stay with him last year, Ivan Basso, and the big man from Germany now has to look very deep down into his suitcase of courage to finish.
But he's back. Jan Ullrich has given us a brilliant display today, and he's forced the issue. Now it is like it was for 2 days in the Alps last year. Lance Armstrong and Ivan Basso, and it was 1-1 the score for the stage victories. Neither of them, I don't think, are going to get the stage win today. But, you know, I think Lance might want to stamp his authority on Basso and remind him, because Basso, all of a sudden, is back in this race big time. Could be second overall tonight.
He's back in the race big time, and Armstrong will remember there is a 12-second time bonus on the finish line, 8 seconds for third. Ulrich now is gap, but now we can see Georg Tocznik. Phil is coming into the final straight. He has survived after escaping into the 10th kilometre. He's still got a lead.
At 34 years of age, he gets the biggest win of a career, which started in 1994. He deserves it. He's been out in front, the only man to survive a 10-man breakaway over every mountain today. He's gone on alone, big gamble, and the most fantastic win of his life. 100% deserved. Well done, Tocznik.
Well, the team manager might not be too happy with the victory photographs in the newspapers tomorrow morning because he didn't zip up his jersey and the sponsor's name isn't visible. But this is the big battle now for second and third place. Wearing number 1, Armstrong is putting time between himself and everybody else in the field here this afternoon, except Ivan Basso, the man who accompanied him last year.
Now, who's going to take it out as they line up for the sprint, shoulder to shoulder, as they were a couple of times? Armstrong leading up. Is he going to unleash one of his fearsome finishes? Showing a banner, he goes for it. Basso's not going to take him. Lance Armstrong sprints away, and just look, he's going to get a time gap here. He'll be measured with a time gap as he drives to the line. Yellow is second. Lance Armstrong stays leader of the Tour de France, and tonight increases his advantage over everyone. There were moments when we would have wondered if that was going to be the case.
Well, Armstrong did what he needed to do this afternoon. You know, he wasn't the aggressor, Phil, as we wait for Jan Ullrich to come up to the line. The aggressor was Jan Ullrich. Ullrich went out on the attack. Armstrong was on the defensive, but he defended to perfection, and at the end of the day came out with the goods. Ullrich, though, has still shown that he is a man of metal and a man you can never discount in a Tour de France. And the two other Americans in this race now are coming in for 5th and 6th position. Levi Leipheimer and Floyd Landis.
And Leipheimer, no contest, both same time. 5th for Leipheimer, 6th for Landis. They have had two great rides, whatever they personally may think. Here comes Mancebo and Rasmussen, who is currently 42 seconds behind Lance Armstrong now, so he's losing time, but I think keeping his second place in the race as he finishes in 8th position for him. So about 45-50 seconds was the gap there for Rasmussen behind Lance Armstrong, so he should have done just enough to place, for which you look at this, it has been a great campaign for Armstrong today. It's not over yet. We'll be back with the action here at Aix-les-Trois-de-Domaine in just a few moments, and we'll give you all the GC updates, of course. And if we can just catch up with Lance, we'll also have a talk with him too. See you in a moment. Welcome back. They are the slopes that have brought the riders from the basement of Aix-les-Thermes to the top of Aix-Trois-Domaine. And we look at these riders. There's the winner today. His legs won't even hold him up. Georg Tocznik has won his first race of the year and his first ever stage of a major tour, and I'm not surprised he's crying, because he did it so well at breaking away in a group of 10 a few kilometers after the start. And just moments ago, you can see the clock ticking away, Alexander Vinokurov came home. This aggressor who knows no word of surrender. He attacks, he gets dropped, he catches up, he attacks again. Deserves everything he gets out of this sport. Well, there's all the chalets, which are always fully occupied, of course, during the ski season here. It's wonderful skiing, and always when the Tour de France gets to finish here too. Oh, Robbie Julich, this is coming in now. 5:57 on the clock, so again, he'll be happy he's done his job for team captain Ivan Basso, who certainly will move up, probably into 3rd place today. I don't think he'll make 2nd, but we're still waiting for the official result to be posted. I think Rasmussen struggled on just enough. This is the big grimace on the face of Michael Bogart now, racing up. Bogart crosses the line. Just to give you a flashback to a little bit earlier than Bogart rather, Popovic came in just behind Walter Benito. He should well remain in that white jersey as best rookie of the Tour. He's done not a bad ride, but he really should have stayed a bit closer to Lance Armstrong there, all the way up the climb. He dropped off very early, didn't he? Let's have a look at the Pacific Life stage result first. Look at that, almost 6 hours today. Georg Tocznik winning his first ever stage race victory. Lance Armstrong in 2nd place. 56 seconds, that's all that remained of 10.5 minutes. Ivan Basso taking 3rd, lost 2 seconds in the sprint. Ullrich lost 18 seconds more to Lance in 4th place. Levi Leipheimer taking 5th place, and he should continue his ascendancy in this race because he's riding superbly. Floyd Landis was there as well, should be happy enough with 6th today. Mancebo a little bit further back in 7th. Rasmussen at 1:47 8th, and Zubeldia 4th on this stage. 2 years ago he was in 10th place today. So that is an incredible result for Lance Armstrong, as well as it would be. Well, don't forget, when we finished our coverage here in a few moments of the Tour de France, up next, in 2001, an ill-fated fishing vessel sank in the Bering Sea with no distress signals and no warnings. So what made this ship sink in less than 8 minutes? OLN explores the mysterious tragedy of the Arctic Rose, up next on Outdoor Investigations, straight after our coverage of the Tour de France. Well, the judges are working on the general classification as we speak. We'll bring it to you as soon as we come back. There might be some changes. How far behind Lance Armstrong are they? We'll know when you come back. See you in a moment. Well, we look down here from this beautiful view. This is Aix-les-Trois-Domaines, and this is brought to us by Trek Lucky 7 Sweepstakes. This is our Trek aerial view today, and what a lovely view it is. Glorious cloudless sky and the yellow jersey of Lance Armstrong reflecting all over the top of this mountain. Boy, he was under pressure today though, wasn't he? As he came home, though, how often have we seen this sprint finish by Lance Armstrong, pinching a couple of seconds off Basso in this sprint finish. And we can now show you the overall situation with the Foster's general classification. There it is. He's now 141 ahead of Michael Rasmussen, who falls back a bit today. Ivan Basso is up from 4th into 3rd. Jan Ullrich is in the frame, 8th up to 4th. Leipheimer in 5th position. 3 Americans are doing extremely well in this race. There's the other one, Floyd Landis in 6th. Andreas Kloden is up to 8th. Vinokurov still hovers, but he's dropped a little bit to 9th. Christophe Moreau, he goes down from 3rd into 10th, and he's now over 8.5 minutes behind Lance Armstrong. All right, let's have a look at how the day went. This was the attack. Look at this. T-Mobile had a plan today. They suddenly, when they got onto the slopes of the Paia, launched an attack that blew away all of Team Discovery, except of the team leader, Lance Armstrong. Once they isolated him, on went Alexander Vinokurov. And then there was some sort of sanity joined in as Armstrong got himself organised and back into the play. It wasn't the end of the attacks, though. Jan Ullrich started again, showing the older picture of Ullrich. Lance Armstrong, though, was forced to counter from the second group, and when he did, no one could counter with him. Just with a magical acceleration, he crossed the gap. Try as they might behind, it was only he that made the group. He was now back alongside Ullrich and Ivan Basso, Floyd Landis. Well, once he got back, of course, this was the rider who also cracked. And Alexander Vinokurov, who started the moves, was now on the defensive. Back in control of the group was Lance Armstrong, trailed by the American Floyd Landis and his 2 arch rivals, Ullrich and Basso. Meanwhile, over the top of the climb of Paia goes Georg Tocznik, never a winner of a major stage race, yet he's had some terrific places in the overall classification. He was now setting himself fair for a victory ride to the finish. Meanwhile, a little chase group behind of Lance Armstrong was beginning to swell. Back were coming the riders who had spent the time chasing uphill as they joined downhill. And when Vinokurov joined in Axley turn, he launched an attack. We thought he must be crazy. Well, it was a reaction by his own team that ruined that one. Questions in the house, I wonder. He was then dispatched from the back of the group and wouldn't be seen again. That was the end of the day for Alexander Vinokurov. Lance Armstrong, still outnumbered, was up there, while Floyd Landis also cracked after a couple of brave attempts to try and stay with the group. Armstrong now was in his element, his fast pedaling cadence. They've seen it all before at close range. As is most often the case, though, they don't see it for too long. And it was Jan Ullrich who was the next rider to crack. His face a picture of agony. Inside 2 kilometres to the line, he was gone. The last man with him, Ivan Basso, and Basso too couldn't hold this man in the sprint because home comes Lance Armstrong. Well, if you thought today was all action, I've no idea what to tell you about tomorrow because it's the hardest day and we have extended coverage tomorrow. We will be live from 7:30 Eastern and it is going to be one big day in the Pyrenees. This is stage 15. It's been said all along, this will be the hardest stage of the race. Expanded primetime coverage at 8 Eastern and 9 Pacific. Lance Armstrong, all of the boys, where have they thrown their energy today? Have they kept anything for tomorrow? My goodness me, we're going to find out. But it is going to be a long, hard day for the riders of the Tour de France. And I'm sure many of them will not be seeing the finish on the Plat de Day tomorrow night. It is going to be a superb race. Oh, that is where the battle was enacted today. We've been here a couple of times recently. Felix Cardenas won once, Carlos Strastas won once. This was, without doubt, the best of the action we've ever seen here on Axe Trois Domain. There's the winner, Georg Tocznik, deserved everything he got today. We'll take a break and we'll be staying here for a moment more. Rejoin us. Welcome back as we stay at Axe Les Trois Domain just for a little bit longer here. We're waiting for the prizes now. And I'm sure we're going to see one pretty happy Georg Tocznik. Let's see if we can get down to that podium. We can. And here he comes. Georg Tocznik salutes the crowd as a big-time stage winner. First time ever. And look at that. He won so well. A break of 10. Went after 10 kilometres. He topped every mountain. The last 2 by himself. The last one was most important. Nobody was with him. And he's now, after turning professional in 1994... 14 seasons as a pro, and it's his 14th victory of his career. Well, he was tipped as being the leader of Gerolsteiner. I think that must now be Levi Leipheimer, but this rider here will join today's celebrations at the team table with Levi, who's also had a good race today. Congratulations there from Bernard Hinault. This is the Pacific Life stage results confirming he beat Armstrong by 56 seconds. They were closing so fast. Armstrong gets 2 seconds out of Basso in the sprint. Ulrich gets dropped just at the last kilometre or so and comes in there 1:18 behind Armstrong, a little bit more I think. Floyd Landis taking 6th place. These are the names we've seen in the Alps now, but the time gap's perhaps a little bit different. Rasmussen in 8th. Heimar Zubeldia, who was 4th in this race last time he came up here, is down there in the top 10 just. Vinokurov is ups and downs. He crosses the Rhine in 11th. Stefano Garzelli in 12th place. His birthday today, 32 years of age. And there is the man who is yet to come onto the podium today and get yet another yellow jersey, number 75, I think it is now, losing count, in his career, which puts him only 3 short of being the second most famous wearer of the maillot jaune. We'll be back. We're just waiting for him to come on stage. We'll be with you. I hope you're with us in a moment. Welcome back. We're waiting now for the prize presentation of Lance Armstrong. We haven't seen how probably retired he is. I'm sure he's still in white. If we look down here, the race is over. The winner is Georg Tochlik. Lance Armstrong is keeping his yellow jersey for yet another day. When we see the overall situation, we are going to see, of course, he's increased his lead today. Now the yellow jersey is up. And here he comes. Lance Armstrong steps out, and I can tell you there are an enormous number of American supporters here today as they cheer Lance Armstrong. Bernard Hinault now, this is the every night on stage conversation between the man who's won it 5 times and the man who's won it 6.
I think Bernard Hinault, Phil, is actually enjoying Armstrong's ride in the Tour de France this year. I've never seen the Hinault smile quite as much as he does.
Well, he's increased his lead over Michael Rasmussen, and Ivan Basso is up into that 3rd place now. The familiar boys are getting close to him. Let's have a look where we go tomorrow. This is a very, very difficult stage, and our map tomorrow brought to us by Mitchum. The riders rolling away. We go to the Porte d'Aspet. After we get over that, the very difficult Col de Monte, onto the Col du Portillon. Can you believe all this? Over the giant Col de Peyresord and onto Saint-Louis-Soulon.
Burn at the end, but just look at the profile. This repetition of climbs in the last half of the race is what's going to make this a mountain stage. L'Etapa Reina, they call it in Spain, the queen of stages.
We'll be live tomorrow, 7:30 a.m. Don't miss a pedal rev. It could be the decisive day of the Tour, and we have our expanded coverage for you at 8 p.m. Eastern. Now tonight, because Lance is just getting ready, we are going to record the interview and bring it to you tonight on our special primetime expanded program at 8 p.m. Eastern. So do join in. There's a lot more for you there that you don't see this afternoon. Up next, there'll be outdoor investigations here on OLN. And as always, thanks to everybody. If you want to know more, go to olntv.com. This was a great day. Hope you enjoyed it. For everybody here at the Tour de France and OLN, goodbye for now.